an invitation to the former President Jacob Zuma to depose an affidavit basically giving his side of the story after being implicated by Themba Maseko as well as Feki Mentor. As you earlier heard in that clip, basically Themba Maseko saying that he had been told by former President Jacob Zuma in a call when RJ Gupta was trying to woo him into a meeting that the former President Jacob Zuma had given him a call from his Mahlabandlovu residence and asked him to help the Gupta family, as well as a former ANC MP, Feki Mentor, who implicated the former president when she said that when she was being offered a ministerial position at the Gupta compound in 2010, that's when after that had happened, the former president had walked in at the residence at the time. So I think given all of that and given the fact that former President Jacob Zuma has already indicated that he was not willing to cross-examine those witnesses that implicated him, because Jacob Zuma basically felt that he was not implicated criminally or ethically, but Justice Zondo believes that by virtue of being implicated by these witnesses, that the former president should depose of an affidavit and also give his version of events. Now, this comes at a time, Arabile, I must point out, where we have seen what the attitude of the former president has been towards this commission of inquiry, where he basically said that he does not see any reason to cross-examine those witnesses. And just yesterday in the Eastern Cape, while he was addressing students, the former president basically said that there's no such thing as a state capture. So it'll be very interesting to see what his decision will be once the lawyers for the former President Jacob Zuma do convey the message of the Justice Zondo to him, and what his attitude will be towards deposing that affidavit. But clearly, to this point, the former president does not believe that there is any state capture, there has been any state capture in South Africa, and does not believe he has so far been implicated. With regard, of course, to Duduzane Zuma being granted leave to cross-examine witnesses, you'd recall that he made an about turn, and it was indicated now that he is willing to come before this commission that, of course, now grants him the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses as well. But we really did see it coming relating to what Justice Zondo would decide relating to the Gupta brothers. You'd recall that during the arguments by the legal representatives, many questions were raised about whether this commission would be basically leaning towards being held to ransom by the Gupta family if they had to dictate terms about where and when they wanted to testify. You'd recall that the Guptas have indicated they don't know what their status is in South Africa. They do not have trust in the Hawks as well as the National Prosecuting Authority in this country, and they are skeptic of the manner in which the Hawks, for example, carry out their powers. And they said that they're not willing to testify in South Africa. They're only to want to do it outside the borders of this country or via video link. So basically, Justice Zondo says there's absolutely no basis for the Guptas to want to testify outside of the borders of South Africa, and by them not wanting to do so, it will be by their own decision that they don't want to give their side of the story. So on the issue of the video link as well, I think the Justice Zondo also indicating there that there is no preferential treatment that will be given to the Gupta brothers, and that this commission does not intend to do so. What precedent would that be setting? Many in South Africa, I guess, would be asking, because what Justice Zondo also argued by giving his ruling, he indicated that what if, for example, one of the Gupta brothers did not tell the truth in the testimony that they were giving? What recourse would this commission have in trying to get them to account for whatever incorrect statement, perhaps, that they could have made in giving testimony outside of the borders of South Africa? So I think at this point, caught between a rock and a hard place, because if the Guptas decide, as they've already categorically stated, they will not be returning to South Africa, and Justice Zondo saying he's not granting them the opportunity to give that testimony via video link or outside the borders of South Africa, what does it leave for this commission then? Because you do find that the Guptas are at the center of these allegations that are being probed here.
Just before closing up there, we are perhaps waiting more communication then out of the Gupta family regarding whether, what their thoughts are on the decision. But have we heard anything from Jacob Zuma as well regarding the affidavit? Have we heard any communication in that regard?
Well, Arabile, nothing at this point, and I think that's certainly the story that we'll be chasing now as to what the former President Jacob Zuma's response will be to this invitation that has been extended to him by Justice Zondo, whether he will depose of that affidavit, giving his version of events. But I really cannot tell at this point, judging by the attitude of the former president to these proceedings, based on the fact that he already indicated that he believes that he was not ethically or criminally implicated by any of the testimony that has so far been given here, and judging by what he told students in the Eastern Cape yesterday, where he says he does not believe that there is any state capture.
Yeah. One would beg the question as to why then he did make it an urgent appeal to set up this commission and treat it with such urgency. But Chriselda, right, we will certainly unpack that a little bit more throughout the day. Chriselda Lewis giving us the latest there from the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture happening in Parktown, Johannesburg.